Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. This is our 999th show since 1996.
Wow.
Our next show will be on the 20th. Will be our 1000th show.
Turn over your odometer.
We don't have a live show again next week because of a wedding in our family and crew here, so we can't miss that. So we will be live again with our 1000th show on September 20th. But tonight, I would like to introduce, we have back on the show, Mr. Michael Kravitz. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back, Nikki Gates, and welcome back, Jay Searles, and welcome for the first time, Paul Von Hartman. Paul, you are the author of this nifty book, Cannabis versus Climate Change, which we'll be talking about more. And over in the wings, Scott Sky Johnson is ready to entertain us with a song. Thank you, Scott.
Glad to be here.
And thank you, guests, and thank you, viewers. We're going to have Scott launch into song. We're going to skip our hemp news because we got a lot of other things going on tonight. But first, as always, or for a long time, we'll bring out our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
Okay, so standing by in the wings, I'd like to welcome back Scott Sky Johnson. Welcome back, Scott.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Good
I
to
always
have
love playing
You have
this.
a new album out, I think.
I do, yeah.
What's it called?
Double Takes.
Double Takes
And
in it.
it's me and my trusty boomerang down here.
Uh-huh.
So there's actually kind of two of us, although this one is more digital than human.
I see. If somebody wants to find your music and your CD, where would they go?
They can find me on CD Baby, Scott Sky Johnson, or you can go to scottskyjohnson.com, and that's my website. You can contact me there, although I'm afraid it does need some updating.
They always do. They always do. Well, I'd like to welcome back Scott Sky Johnson. Thank you, Scott.
This song that I'm going to play for you guys is, I have to play it every time I'm here because I wrote this back in '89 when I first read that book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, and it was like...
It definitely says it all. It's a great hemp song. Definitely in my top 5. Thank you.
Well, and every time I play this, I have to say, it used to be kind of banned. Like, we did a lot of Save the Trees and peace things and stuff, and they'd say, don't play that hemp song, okay? It's a little too controversial. And I'd be like, oh, please.
And now they're replacing oak boards with hemp boards. And they just opened a new factory to make hemp boards in Kentucky just this month.
It is so sweet. Yeah, it does feel like we've come a long ways.
Yeah, but there's still so far to go, and
it is a long
things have
ways
gotten
to
a
go.
lot worse in some ways.
Yeah, but at least we got this gift, you know.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot more to give us.
It does. Yeah,
And your song tells us about that.
We've barely just begun.
Indeed.
I think I'm going to have to add another couple verses. They got those hemp batteries now and, hemp plastic. I mean, it's like, there's some verses yet to be written for this thing.
There's some things yet to be discovered, that's for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, 3D printing with hemp has the potential to change everything.
Huh. Yeah, it's like I don't even think we've begun to imagine what there is possible out there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's just start this, baby. You ready? Okay. There is a plant. There was a plant. Well, maybe it's just... I think it's just going to be me without the boomerang. We must have lost power with that thing because I had it all set up and ready to go. So we're going to go for a live version of this instead of the boomerang, which is just fine. So there is a plant that we all knew as illegal. But why that was, I never did see. 'Cause it's something that can help us change this path of destruction we're on when we change to a hemp economy. Many centuries it was used to make paper, 4 times more fiber per acre than trees. We could save our ancient forest, it's renewable every year when we change to a hemp economy. Quarter all the pesticides and herbicides sprayed on Mother Earth. I sprayed there by the cotton industry. Did I mention you can make a finer cloth from its stalk when we change? Why don't we change? Well, the seed has got more protein per pound than any other plant. We could feed it to all of our world's hungry, 'cause it grows like a weed in all 50 states, even builds up your soil when we change to a hemp economy. The seed has also got more oil per pound than any other plant. We could refine it to make cleaner gasoline, reduce pollution from combustion by 80% just by changing to a hemp economy. And unlike alcohol, it can reduce your stress, open your mind up along with your capillaries. The pharmacopoeia of medicine from glaucoma to pain when we change. Why don't we change? There was a plant that we all knew as illegal, but why that was, I never could see. Here is something that could help us change this path of destruction we're on. We got to change, can't you see? We could change our reality just by changing to a hemp economy. Yeah, we gotta change. And guess what, people here in Oregon and a bunch of other states? We have changed. Yeah.
All right, thank
God.
you. I appreciate it. Scott Sky Johnson. Go out to scottskyjohnson.com or look for you on CD Baby. You'll
Go
be
home
back
and update that bugger right now.
All right. We'll be back with another live song to take us out here in about 50 minutes. Well, I want to welcome back Michael and Nikki and Jay and back for the first time, Paul. Paul, you've got this book out, pretty new, Cannabis versus Climate Change. And you've been an activist a long, long time for spiritual use of cannabis and the environmental use of cannabis. And what else? What am I missing?
Well, yeah, I have been. Thank you for recognizing that. I've been tuned up to the cannabis, the true value of cannabis since 1991. And I have been active in planting cannabis publicly, challenging the rightful jurisdiction of any court over a natural resource that's both unique and essential. And over the course of the last 28 years, I have devoted myself to the scholarship of this plant in every way that I could relate with it, including, of course, growing it, breeding cannabis. I went to Holland and Europe. I lived in Europe for 10 years and filmed the cannabis industry in Europe and participated in the harvest in Europe back in the late 90s in Switzerland. And
I was there too.
yeah, and just tried to show people in this country what was going on in Europe that needed to happen here. And
Now
finally,
we're ahead of them.
Now finally we're
goodness.
there, and like you said, there's a lot more work to be done. But I think my book and my film by the same title, which you can see on
Cannabis versus Climate Change.
Yes, it's also on Vimeo.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the film that explains the environmental services of cannabis specific to climate change. And really, it's the most magical thing you can imagine. It has to do with the terpenes that go up.
That was something that you were telling me about the other day that I had never heard from any other source, but it sounds very interesting, and I think there is some other science now that I've heard about it from you that supports that the aromatic hydrocarbons that cause the aroma that we appreciate from cannabis have a significant effect on climate.
Yeah, they do. And the science has been done, but it was done on pine trees. The terpenes from the pines have been studied and have been recognized for their value in reflecting solar UVB radiation away from the planet and serving as cloud condensation nuclei that form bright and persistent clouds and are rained out of the sky. And so they become part of the hydrologic cycle. Well, as we know, the terpenes have antiviral, antifungal, antibiotic properties that it doesn't seem too far a stretch to imagine that they play a role in purification of the hydrologic cycle as well. The fact is we have half the terpenes in the atmosphere now than we had 50 years ago because the boreal forests have been cut and the marine phytoplankton have been killed one way or another. And so we have about half the boreal forests left than we had 50 years ago. We have about half the phytoplankton left. And the forests and the phytoplankton produce these atmospheric aerosol terpenes that are also produced by cannabis. So I tell people that cannabis is a multi-trillion-dollar crop, but that's not the most valuable thing about it. There is no money on a burned out planet.
Yeah, and we've gone a long way toward that in our lifetime, unfortunately. But you know, it started way before we were born. I mean, you know, recent science has shown that when the Europeans invaded the Americas, that global warming slowed because so many Native and First Nation countries in North and South America suffered genocide and epidemics that wiped out 90% of the population of North and South America. And that slowed global warming. You know, you go back 25,000 years ago and the sea level was 400 feet lower than it is today. So we've already seen 400 feet in sea level rise with the end of the ice age, you know. So we might see another 30 or 40, you know. A lot of migrations have happened over the years because climate change is an ongoing reality, and you know, so we look at it in our lifetimes and that's our picture, but it goes back way, way beyond that. They say that the cave bear was driven to extinction in Europe 25,000 years ago by people. And where did the mastodons go in our lifetime? As soon as people showed up, they disappeared shortly thereafter. You know, climate change has been going on a long, long time, but I think cannabis is something we've co-evolved with for those 25,000 years.
Well, it's true, but the UVB radiation levels are different from the warming, the temperature increase. And if you look at the historical measurements that have been done just since the late 80s, you can see that there's a steady rise, not only in the intensity of the UVB, but in the frequency of occurrence, the number of days per year where the UVB is in excess of the top measurement that they have on the scale that they use. They have a 11 plus.
And tell us about the effects on plants and animals of UVB
Well,
radiation.
they're not good, but I like to preface what I'm saying with the knowledge that there is something we can do about it. So before you hear about all the terrible things that can happen, just rest assured that there is something that we can do to prevent what would otherwise threaten all
And
life
isn't
on
that
Earth.
we need to change to a hemp economy?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we need
Somebody
to
said
recognize.
that. I don't
we
know.
need to
I've heard that
recognize that,
somewhere.
cannabis is mankind's functional interface with the natural order. Without cannabis, our species can never achieve sustainability on this planet, and we've proved that by prohibiting it for the last 82 years. And now we're facing cascading systems failures and systemic collapse that our children are going to be the ones that really face the worst of it.
Well, it keeps getting worse every day. You know,
Yes,
we're
it
facing it
does.
right here in
And
our
other
lifetime. The
people's-
oceans are
yeah,
filled with
exactly.
plastic. You know,
Exactly. And
the forests are gone. The glaciers are disappearing. You know, it's just happening, and it's too late to stop it. It was too late to stop it a long time before we were born. And you know, but part of it is the fact that cannabis has been stolen from us by the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, corporate, elite, fascist sons of a bitches.
Exactly.
You know, they lied to us. Thank you, Gatewood Galbraith. It's been going on, and you know, you can just look at the coevolution that's happened with cannabis. I believe that we have co-evolved with cannabis. We've changed cannabis. Cannabis has changed us. And that you can look at dogs, which are also, according to Latin, tied to cannabis because they're canines, you know. But dogs, the Latin name is Canis familiaris, Canis lupus familiaris, where the wolf is Canis lupus. And 10 to 12,000 years ago, we only had wolves. Now we have Chihuahuas and pugs and Great Danes and bulldogs. You can just see how much dogs have changed over 10,000. It might have only been 7,000 years that this has been going on. You know, they've changed rapidly. The same things happen to us. I don't think it's any, you know, great mystery why hemp seed perfectly matches humans' nutritional needs in the oil for the essential fatty acids and the amino acids in the protein. It's because we have co-evolved with this plant, and you know, it's at the basis of so many different civilizations.
It needs us to propagate.
Yeah, it's a symbiotic relationship between us,
Absolutely.
you know, and we both benefit. But you know, I wish we'd had a whole show to do with you, Paul, and a whole show to do with you, Michael, and a whole show to do with Nikki and Jay here. Let me jump over to Nikki and Jay. Nikki and Jay, thanks for coming back on the show.
You are welcome.
We have
Happy to
coming
be
up
here.
next weekend on the 14th and the 15th, the Hemp Aid 2019, the second Hemp Aid concert. You want to tell us about that?
Sure. Hemp Aid was created as kind of a special thing. A friend of mine and I got together. Hi, Trish.
Jay's wife.
Decided that there was a need for festivals that helped other entities that weren't doing so well, such as our Portland hemp stock. We have accrued lots of bills. Paul can get into that.
Well,
And-
because of a big corporate takeover that I suffered, the funding for our festival, the Hemp Stock
Yes.
Festival, and $50,000 in annual funding for the Seattle Hemp Fest also
Yes.
were stolen and are now in the possession of the Marlboro Man.
Yes.
The Altria Group is now invested in the Kronos Group, and the board of directors on the Kronos Group are the people who robbed me. Yeah, so they used my assets to bring in $1.8 billion of investment from the Marlboro owners, Altria Group, into the Kronos Group, basically based on my assets. They didn't pay me a penny. In fact, they even stole our nonprofit's grow house here in Portland. Never paid a penny for any of that. But who can fight $1.8 billion, right?
That's the point.
And so I want to thank you, because last year we had $35,000 in debt on the Hemp Stock Festival, and you raised $5,000. So now it's just $30,000.
That was the first year.
Yeah.
We had about 4,500 people over the weekend. That was the whole weekend. Jorge came out.
Yeah, Jorge Cervantes was there.
And
I hope he can make it
visited
this
us.
year.
I hope so too. This year, we have so much support. Pony Boy, Real One from Modesto, Pony Boy from Las Vegas, Busy Bee, Chief Rocker, legendary.
He invented the word hip hop.
Yes, creator of the word hip hop is coming from Baltimore to celebrate with us. And this is just one of those good old causes. It feels like a good old home week type situation where you get to see all these people that you don't get to see normally, but they all come together for the same just cause. And I really appreciate all of you. And it's been an absolute pleasure to know all of you and all of you that are stepping forward for this wonderful event. We're not only helping hemp stock this year, we've kind of gathered a couple other things and entities, one of them being autism. We have quite a few people in our community that have autistic children, autistic parents, autistic brothers and sisters. So they aren't being nationally touched, unfortunately. When your money is going to some of the national programs, unfortunately, it doesn't trickle down to all these families that we know. And so we are doing some things to benefit those families and those children, such as a spring camp, horseback riding, things that a lot of autistic kids don't normally get to do, and their parents. So we're bringing that to light. We had a friend that had a daughter that was lured away off of the internet, 18 years old with a mental disability. The parents were fortunate enough to get this young lady back 4 to 5 days later, in good health, good standing, everything. But you want to talk about a scary moment. Trish and I got in our cars. We scouted all of Portland in our cars for 4 days looking for this child. Just because it's not our child, it is somebody's child. So we felt our due diligence as humans and as good friends of the parents to go out there and look for ourselves. And upon that, we ran into a rescue mission that helps underground trafficking. So we also want to help benefit that group because they do so much to help these parents get back these 19 and 18-year-old kids that are on disabilities, but the police won't help you because the child is of age. So to get them to do anything is almost nil and void. Sorry, officers, but that's the truth of the matter, and as a parent, that's how I see it. So it takes us as a community to go out and bring these children back or put enough fillers out there that someone returns them. Sorry, that's my spiel
okay.
on that.
So this will go to
I'm
human
a mom and a
trafficking,
grandma.
rescue missions, autism, and hemp stock.
You betcha. It's going to be cut in a 3-piece pie.
Jay, is there anything you'd like to say about the event? You've been organizing this thing along with your wife, Trish, and...
Well, one of the things I'd like to start with, last year we had 90 days to plan out.
I was amazed it came off as well as it did.
Yes.
I got to admit, and maybe you heard back that I was doubtful it could be done in a short amount of time.
We pulled it off.
I like that because that's pressure, and I work really great under pressure.
Right.
We pulled that off with the help of our core group. Our core group has been very instrumental in the planning and the organizing of the event. We cannot take all the credit for it.
Right.
No.
But what I can say is this year, Hemp Aid 2019 will be at a much more friendly
It's definitely a
venue.
friendlier venue, a place where there's a huge building that people could be inside if the rain is bad. It's
Yes,
like
what we've done out
200
there-
feet long?
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
100
it's 200 feet
wide?
long and about 75 feet wide.
Yeah.
Covered
And you've
space.
got parking, and you've even got camping available.
Yes, it's
And
just
this is a free event.
yes,
So it's free entry.
free parking.
Free parking.
We've got some really cool activities because we've had
The
more
dunk
time
tank.
to plan. Yes, the
dunk
Davin
tank.
dunk
Speaking of the
tank.
dunk tank,
Rumor has it.
Well, I'll tell you what. You do it, and I'll do it.
I'm
Nick.
doing it.
Okay, hey,
You
I'm gonna
got
hold
it.
you- I will
guess
hold you both
stepped
to
into
that.
it. I hear that.
But we do have a dunk tank
know.
coming out this year. It's just really one of the activities that are going out on the venue. We've did events out at this property before for almost 2 years now.
And I heard Eddie Lepp is going to come. Too.
Yes,
Yeah.
he's coming out.
Yeah,
So that'll
Eddie's
be
coming.
interesting. He came to our hemp stock festival till they put him in federal prison.
I know.
But Busy Bee, I'm excited about that.
Me
He's,
too.
Yes.
he's a legend.
He's coming all the way from the East Coast.
Yeah.
We have guests coming from all around the country for this event, by the way. We're very proud of it.
Busy Bee started in the 70s, and just the
Yeah.
whole hip hop movement grew out of his work and the other people there in Brooklyn, New York, who got it going way back when.
Yep.
He's still pushing it in New
He
York.
is. He's got some good songs, too.
Yeah.
So,
They talk about it
Michael?
on Sirius XM quite a bit.
So, Michael, you have done so much, and again, we could have a whole 2 or 3 hour show about all of your work. Recently, you've been working with the World Health Organization and the International Narcotics Control Board to try to get the the international scheduling of cannabis changed, which is a incredibly complex job. Everywhere I go in the world, everyone's got good things to say about you, by the way.
Thank you.
Julio Zanil from Expo Weed Mexico was just telling me yesterday, you're great, just so you know. And so you've also been working on veterans' rights as a disabled United States military service-connected veteran. I appreciate that too. Tell us more.
Well, gosh. Yeah, the work at the World Health Organization has panned out a little better than I expected, really.
You've been at it a while.
This particular project, just this specific thing that's finishing up, it'll actually finish up, I'll explain more in a minute, but March 2020. So that's when we have the vote back at the UN on what the World Health Organization has decided. But it stems back to a seed resolution, a cannabis seed resolution at the United Nations in 2009. So it's 10 years ago now that this has been going on. And it's very funny too because especially Japan was complaining about cannabis seeds that their children were buying on the internet and growing in their closet at college, and they couldn't, and I could almost hear Mark Emery laughing.
Yes, I was
Overgrow the
just-
world.
I was just thinking that.
Were you? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it finally came, into light just a few years back, about 5 years back is when it really started moving inside the World Health Organization. It stalled forever. And what this is the last time there was any discussion about cannabis and the words and the, I don't even want to call it science, but the backup of what is actually in the treaty today is from 1935, believe it or not, back in Anslinger's day. And this is the first ever review of cannabis that the World Health Organization has ever done.
And it's Anslinger who basically imposed the start of this on us.
He was our
With the
international.
first single convention
he was
treaty
actually
on
our,
narcotic drugs.
and just so you have a kind of reference point. As I understand it, he was looking to bolster the constitutional authority of the Marijuana Tax Act, which didn't work because Timothy Leary won his case in the federal Supreme Court, and the Marijuana Tax Act was found unconstitutional. But this new law, and the one we're under today, the Controlled Substances Act, it was
of
actually
1971.
It was written to implement the treaty. The treaty was signed in 61, and the act was passed in 71, and they said at the time, this is to implement our obligations under the international treaty. So the treaty is like woven and written right into our U.S. federal law.
So we've spearheaded this international treaty
Yep.
all across the world,
We've
and
drove
now
it, yep.
we've turned our back on it, and Oregon and Washington and
That's the way it
Colorado
looks.
and California
That's the way it looks.
have said, screw that, we're not paying attention to that
And
anymore.
with that backdrop, we have this
I always
vote coming up.
feared, in writing our law here in Oregon,
I know. You
this,
fear
the courts
treaty.
would throw our initiative out because of the international
Because of
treaty.
the treaty.
So I think our model, and I think you might agree with this, it's the only model that was ever written to regulate cannabis according to the requirements of the Single Convention Treaty and the United Nations
Well,
treaties
on
on psychotropic
that,
substances.
I've felt for a long time now that there's a lot of what's going on in the states that's quite literally going to be just washed away when the federal law changes. But then there's some things that will become the model for what's going to happen at the federal level and even the international level. And I think you're right. I think thinking forward like that, trying to come up with something that would work under those. It's not really for the state. To deal with treaty, that's for the federal government. Right. But it doesn't hurt to think ahead and to say, hey, we're going to be trying to have commerce. We're going to be trying to have a business and interests that are going to
our
span
model
the globe.
here in Oregon that we put forward in 2012 was by far the most farm friendly and the most environmentally friendly. We said that people would be able to grow their own without a limit on the number of plants or the amount of cannabis they could possess. Only they needed a license to sell it. Yep. And we also said that cannabis licenses would be equitably distributed among all applicants. And it was set up, and that industrial hemp farmers would not be limited to low THC hemp.
That was an important one. Jack Arrow, I think, was really in favor of that one. But here, the World Health Organization, what they did, as you might imagine, when they actually were able to look at the evidence and really weigh the incredible amount of evidence that we've got to look at, and they did, I think, do a pretty diligent job of that. They came to the conclusion that cannabis, even whole flower plant cannabis, has medical value, distinct, certifiable and accountable medical value. And I think that's going to really be important. It's kind of something embedded in the details of this process that isn't really coming out to light until the process is over. But I think just that, all by itself, that the World Health Organization has made that statement is big news. But the recommendations for change in the treaty are actually pretty, they're not as far as we would like them to go, but I don't think they'd pass if they were as far as we'd like to go. But it's pretty profound. It's going to make a pretty significant change. I wouldn't say it's going to legalize marijuana or anything even close to that, but we have a situation now where it's just ridiculous. Cannabis is treated like heroin in the treaty, and it would reduce that down to being treated like a medicine, and a normal medicine at that. You should actually be able to have some of these medicines like these that we have in the dispensary today that aren't in the flower form. Some of those will actually be very, very low control if we get all these recommendations passed, where it'll be over the counter. You'll still have to have, more tight control on the whole flower. That's appeasing, Russia, maybe, I don't know. But it is a pretty ambitious recommendation. And this goes up for a vote. The World Health Organization makes the recommendation officially. They've already done that. And then the United Nations, at their Commission on Narcotic Drugs meeting in Vienna, Austria, in this coming March 2020, they'll vote, and it's a simple majority vote. The work at the United Nations, one of the most arduous things about it is everything's by consensus. Trying to get, there's 53 members of countries that are part of this Commission on Narcotic Drugs, trying to get all of them in unison is like, forget it.
Herding cats.
Yeah, but to get a simple majority, that's doable. And that's what's got me and a lot of people excited. We might actually get this thing through. And I love it. And not only would we really upset Anslinger, but hey, if you go in...
rolling in his grave.
Rolling in his grave.
I know a number of people have danced on it.
They'll be able to beat to dance to because he's going to be rolling so fast in the ground. But also, hey, if you've ever gone into federal court against the DEA, and I have on a couple of occasions, the first thing they bring up is the international treaty. And we're really going to hurt their argument. So again, anything that makes a DEA uncomfortable
if the federal
is
government
pretty good by me.
changes it, they're completely out of the ballpark, right? They just ruled, 2 weeks ago, that they no longer control hemp, and that hemp, if it's less, once it gets above that magic number of 0.3, a third of 1%, suddenly
it becomes marijuana.
It becomes marijuana.
Yeah.
And that often happens about 6 weeks into the flower cycle, and so. Paul, you've been working on that as well. You've been working on it. Tell us about your work in that field.
Well, I was in Switzerland in 2002. That's
when they made it illegal again.
Yeah.
I was in Switzerland in 98 and 99.
That was when they had the pillows, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Buy
the
a pillow of
sleep
cannabis
schlaf
for aromatherapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but well-
and so I'll just tell a background story real quick since you brought it up, that the Swiss Public Health Department backed the Droleg initiative in 2007. The Swiss invented the initiative process, by the way, in the 1860s,
Wow.
and Oregon copied it in 1902.
That's
So
interesting.
when Oregon passed the initiative system, it was called the Swiss system. When the rest of the United States passed the
They called it
initiative,
the Oregon.
they called it the Oregon system.
Isn't that interesting?
But the way it works in Switzerland is
Oregon
if
Army
you
knife.
get 10% of the signatures, it becomes law for 5 years. And so Droleg got 10% of the signatures in 1997, and marijuana was legal for 5 years. And then in 2002, the election came. The United States, in a country of 6 million voters, the DEA spent $10 million backing parent groups in Switzerland to oppose the Droleg resolution, and it lost with 48% in favor, 52% against. So with that story told, this background for our audience, go ahead, Paul. I didn't.
That's all right.
rant so long.
I started writing to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization because they have a global hemp forum, or they have a global food security forum. And the moderators wouldn't allow my postings to be shared with the other people in the forum. There are many countries participating in this food security forum. And so I wrote to all of the participants individually and said, you know, cannabis nutrition needs to be considered by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, and the prohibition of marijuana is keeping that from happening. So I finally got through to a gentleman who had been at the Food and Agriculture Organization for 35 years. He was retired, but he was participating in the forum. A man by the name of Andrew McMillan. And he was livid that he had been trying to solve world hunger for 35 years and nobody told him about the nutritional properties of cannabis. Well, make a long story short, I think it was in 2016 that the United Nations finally started including discussions of food security in their drug policy reviews. And so, you know, one person can make a difference, but it's not always straightforward. One person can't make a difference by himself. He has to have help. And so, you know, thanks to Andrew McMillan and the other people in the forum, now when you go to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization's website and you do a search for hemp, you'll actually get nutritional information about the seed that is meaningful. And that's something that is just another milestone that leads us to the realization that if cannabis can do all of these things that we know that it can, and if cannabis can actually cure climate change, then what are people worried about in limiting the THC production of a plant that's 35 million years old?
I agree. You know, THC is a benefit, and it's not dangerous. And we've got this ridiculous paranoia about THC, and that's really just a mechanism to control us and to take money out of the hands of the large group and funnel it into the hands of, I'm going to say it one more time, the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, corporate elite, fascist sons of a bitches.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
so thank you, Gateway Galbraith.
The truth is that years ago we were told, well, more studies are needed. Mm-hmm. Well, the studies have been done, and the studies show that not only is THC not bad for the human body. It's actually good for the human body.
You know, when Jack Herer first said, if you smoke marijuana, you will live 2 years longer, I've got to admit, and I thought he was crazy. You know, I really did. I thought, boy, where does he get that? You know, and I'm still not sure where he got it, but he was right. He was right. You know, it has all sorts of benefits. Even osteoporosis is slowed by Alzheimer's is stopped by it. You know, we have co-evolved with cannabis, and it's an essential nutrient for many of us.
Absolutely. You know? And you know what's interesting is that because people separate the smokable herb from the edible seeds, you know, people forget that if you include the whole plant in your use of it, the different parts of it will complement the other parts of it. When I was in Holland, I started making a drink I call leche verde that uses the roots, the seeds, the leaves, the flowers, all in one drink. And I went from needing a minimum of 9 hours of sleep every night to doing better on 5. And these are the kinds of things that aren't being done in universities. They're not being studied in the institutions that are funded by the competitive industries. But these are things that are being done in people's homes, on people's farms, where people know how to work with this plant and know how to grow it and use it in the best ways without the regulation that is slowing the broader awareness of how valuable cannabis is. It used to be that people said cannabis was illegal. Now we say cannabis is valuable. Well, the next step is cannabis is essential, because if we don't fix climate change, it won't matter what else we do fix.
Well, you know, there's a lot of talk in Southern Oregon and fear that male hemp plants will pollinate our sensimilla crop, you know? And, you know, I think that sensimilla crops are well and good, and I enjoy them. But I think it's more important that we grow the seed. We need weed seed to stop the greed and return health to our planet. And
exactly.
So I think that we need to grow on at least 10% of the world's land hemp, high THC hemp seed, and we will get all the possible CBD and THC and CBG and terpenes by extracting from those flowers after we've taken the seeds out. And the seeds, you know, hemp plastic is already economically competitive with petroleum plastic. There's just not enough hemp oil. So I think we're going to start to see an end to that, and we will stop deforestation, wipe out world hunger, slow the change in the climate. So many benefits that, you know, we all are the choir here, but it's something that needs to happen, and we got to get rid of the fear of the THC.
Absolutely. And also to recognize the environmental services of growing cannabis as being worth the economic considerations that are due for things like carbon sequestration, oxygen production, terpene production. Those are all things that people could have tax credits for and would help to direct the evolution of our industry toward Gaia therapeutic industry, earth healing industries, rather than Gaiacidal industries, the earth killing industries. And once the environmental services of cannabis are factored in, then the momentum, just based on need, because time is the limiting factor in the equation of survival. If we don't change what's happening with cannabis quickly, then we could run out of time. And that would be really unfair to our children and our grandchildren, because they're the ones that are going to be facing the worst of it.
Absolutely.
Amen. And A women too.
Yeah, don't forget us.
So, Michael, tell us what our viewers can do to affect the changes on an international level, And also, tell us about your work for veterans and to expand veterans' access to medical marijuana.
Well, right now, we have this vote coming up at the UN that I talked about, and there's 53 countries. We have, I think, at a head count, maybe 24 friends. That would be countries like ours that have progressive cannabis programs. You'd think we'd ever be saying that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we actually could win the vote, but we have a few countries that we need to reach. That's kind of a heavy lift, but who knows? Gosh, within 1 degree of separation of some of the people hearing my voice might be some of the very people that we need to activate to help governments like Mexico, Canada.
Mexico will have cannabis
Colombia,
legal
lots
in the
of
next
countries.
2 months.
Right.
Did you know
Make
that
sure they
the
vote our
Prime
way,
Minister
so.
of Japan uses medical marijuana? Shinzo Abe's been using medical marijuana for 12 years. Shinzo Abe became Prime Minister about 15 years ago for about 18 months, and he had to retire because of ulcerative colitis. And then he started using medical cannabis.
That helped.
Now he has been the Prime Minister longer than any other Japanese Prime Minister since World War II, and his wife is a big advocate of cannabis and its spiritual use in Japanese Shinto.
Yeah.
So I don't know really, where to tell people to fit in, but I do feel like I should give people an overview of kind of where we're at. I've been talking about medical, really. The treaty restricts access to medical and scientific purposes. So if you're going to work within the treaty, it's for scientific and medical purposes. And cannabis is a medicine. Really, we have a lot that we can do within that framework, obviously.
There's all the medicine right there.
But we're also talking about regulate versus prohibition. And that's a conversation that boiled up from the ground up inside the U.S. It's boiling up from the ground up around the world. And right now, it's kind of a pivotal moment. And people can help in a variety of ways just by paying attention, really, and spreading the word and passing information along. So right now, we have what's called an inter-se agreement that some countries are talking about entering into that would allow for what I've kind of termed it as sort of wet and dry counties at the international level. That may
wet and
happen.
dry countries.
Wet and dry countries, yeah, right?
Just throw in an R.
Yeah, and that would be kind of neat to be able to have free commerce.
We take the R out here in Portland.
All right.
Yeah, we do. It's Spotland.
There you go. That's a trend. I like that. It's working. So we are definitely going to see more and more countries that are going to want to work towards, so it's funny, but how the international stuff works, they always say, think globally but act locally, right? Well, what you're doing right here, you really master the craft right here.
That's why we started this show. So many people have moved here. And
that's what we take. That's what we take to the world.
in 23 years.
Yeah, we're working on a bunch of things right now. Personally, we've just finished up a big report on sustainability. The United Nations has a big program on sustainability that you can plug into, even at the very local grassroots level. I encourage people to look into that. And also, we have oh gosh, what is all the stuff that we're working on now? Right now, we're looking at this new kind of area of expertise around these really great heirloom, varieties that we knew and loved, the Acapulco Golds and the Panama Reds.
The ones that the genetic masters of our world want to steal from us.
Exactly.
And, the corporate
in the lingo of the stuff that I've begun to learn, I'm just a year or two into this, but we have what's called a geographical indication, where a plant has to be grown in a specific place with the dirt, and not just that, but the culture and the practices of the people, the love of the people going in. All that goes into that final product. That's what made that Panama Red. That's what made that.
That is just exactly what I told the people when I was in Mexico City last weekend. That you have. Acclimated the Michoacan and the Oaxaca, and your farmers should concentrate and save those varieties because they've been grown specifically for their environment.
We have a way to protect them. There are mechanisms that have been put in place all the way at the international level, all the way into many countries, including the United States. We haven't signed some of the more important agreements, but other agreements we have signed, and other big countries have signed. And I think we can apply those to protect the little guy, the original ganja man, as the Prime Minister of Jamaica called it. I love that. I love that.
Little guy.
No, that's what we need to have happen, and that's what one of the reasons that I had the corporate masters of the tobacco industry come in here and take me out. In fact, one thing I was going to tell you, I grow 27 varieties of cannabis. They claim, and they're using this in court, that because They bought everything I ever
they-
owned.
they want that too.
They're going and saying to people, you can't use the name train wreck because we bought it from Paul Stanford. You can't use the name UK Cheese because we bought it from Paul Stanford. Now, they never paid me a penny, but they claim that they own this, and they're trying to stop farmers from using these names, claiming.
What I'm
Good luck.
particularly excited
Good
about,
luck.
Yeah.
over time, they've created a lot of international agreements to protect indigenous peoples. And I personally feel like that's a tool that we can apply, not just protecting and it's written right into these agreements, protect the genetics against big corporate interests that are going to come in and add a flavoring and patent it and not give any profits. They actually talk about that kind of stuff specifically. But they also
think
talk about
DNA
protecting,
should not be patentable. I think that it should be
that's
open
another-
source
another
code
whole
like
discussion.
Linux, and
But
that
let
is
me
an
finish that thought. Let me
initiative that
finish
I
that.
put forward, and that's another reason they came to crush me, because I was working on that as implementing it at a state level. Just like
geez.
marijuana prohibition
like that.
couldn't really be changed at a state level, but we did it. I was working, and I'm still working. I haven't stopped just
Yeah.
because I don't have any money. But it never stopped me
They
before.
wanted
They wanted to stop that,
Things
and I
are
had another
built.
initiative to make citizens have more rights than corporations. They didn't like that one either, so
But
here we are.
to finish my thought, we have instruments not just to protect these
like it.
genetics
I like it.
from this corporate interest, but also to protect the knowledge base on how to grow it. I mean, this is our, rituals and practices and knowledge that we've gained. Even if we just joined yesterday, we've got traditional uses that go back eons, and we're adding to that. We're augmenting that. We're part of that great experience, and we can, claim some of that protection. And at the same time, the part I love the most, help the indigenous peoples, and even more, help finally put a nail in colonialism. Really, put that one to bed.
All right. Ethnocentricity is a scourge of humanity, and stealing from the indigenous people has been
It's a debt we
key
need to
that.
repay.
Yeah, we need to return sovereignty to these people and control, because they protected this planet better than our corporations have, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So you're also working for United States military veterans, of
Well,
which
yeah.
I am one.
So yeah, we passed a VA policy back in 2010, updated in 2011, and in 2017. It's still in force. It provides some measure of protection for the veteran to use medical cannabis outside, or really, because the federal government has never made any distinction between medical and non-medical, as long as you're abiding by a state law and getting the cannabis legally through the state channels, really you're covered. But it's preferable to use medical channels because it has many great benefits,
So-
Yeah.
and also
so-
more protection.
my-
So you're telling me some of my friends that go up to the VA hospital on the hill now that are having to either give up their opiates
they
or
shouldn't
keep
have
their
to.
cannabis.
The doctor's
or keep
violating
their
the policy.
opiates and give up their
I'm telling you, the doctor and the whole VA facility is violating the policy. And in fact, I'm
Who's
planning.
to enforce that though? Who would enforce
Up till now,
that?
it's been our little tiny organization, and that's why it's been so hard. We've been trying to get the VA to step in more actively. But listen, we had a problem in Southern California where it wasn't just a bad doctor or bad administrator, it was a whole bloody area, VISN, they call it Veterans Integrated Service Network. 6 hospitals went over from LA all the way into Nevada, and this little demigod
The dark side is
administrator-
strong.
It
was.
is.
But listen, we went to Washington, D.C. because we were able to get a copy of this idiot policy that he had put through, and we showed it to the VA national office, and they said, this is inconsistent with VA policy, and they straightened it out like that. So you can actually straighten them out, but I'll tell you, be very careful. Don't ever get in an argument with your doctor at the VA. You very carefully get your medical file. You can actually get a copy of your medical file without ever asking your doctor or anything. It's
You
right
can do
through
it all electronically.
do it all electronically, so you
Yeah.
see what they've written in your file, and then
I
you
have.
respond to that. And I'll
They
tell you,
destroyed my file before
That's-
1988.
you come up
They
with some
said,
hard
"Oh,
problems,
it's not."
Paul.
Yeah, I know.
That's a hard
They
problem
said
to
that all of my files before 1988 are no
That's a
longer
tough
there. Of
one.
course,
They exist somewhere.
They drugged and tortured me in 1986, but that's
well,
another
that's
story. That's why they
inconvenient to lose the
disappeared.
records. Yeah,
Yeah.
They've lost all the MK Ultra records, I'm sure, as well.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
but
Well, you know
seriously-
what? We are
seriously,
down to just 2.5
in 30
minutes
seconds,
left.
I just want to say,
Okay.
there is help. And we like to go through the chain of command. There is a chain of command at the VA facility. If you go above your doctor, if the doctor is the one, try to figure out where it's coming from. If it's a mini policy that is coming out, or if it's just your doctor, if it's just your clinic, and you go above that, you complain to the administrator, you complain to the director of the facility, and if you have to, you go above that.
We have
can help you
allies
do that.
everywhere.
Yep.
Cannabis has
Yep.
allies
Yeah.
everywhere.
And
So many people are in the closet.
They do respond. I'll
They
tell
are.
you, if you can get
Yeah.
above them and get
And
to
I
the
hope
right
they
person.
come out
So,
next week.
Michael, Mike, if somebody wants to hook up and find out more, where can they find you out there in the internet?
Easiest place to find me, Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access. We've got a Facebook page where we post a lot of stuff, especially veterans related, every once in a while UN related, usa.vmca. So it's Facebook/usa.vmca as in Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access.
All right, thank you. Nikki and Jay, the Hemp Aid 2019 comes up
Jay.
here very, very quickly.
What
And
would you like to say about it?
I
You
want to
haven't
thank you
said
for
very
helping put it on.
much.
So what is anything, nothing really happens except a VIP party on Friday, is that right?
Our VIP kickoff party is Friday evening. The festival starts Saturday.
9 a.m.
And the festival is at 13501 South Malina Road in Malina, Oregon. Malina's halfway, but am I saying that right?
You
Malina?
are saying it right.
I
Nice.
thought so. I've lived here a long time, but I just want to be sure.
Make sure.
But it's right between Oregon City and
Malala.
That's it. I
When
was
you-
trying to remember Dr. Levesque's home.
When you're looking for directions out to
That's
the
it.
Malino venue, you would want to make sure you include Malino
Yeah.
because Canby has the same address.
Wow.
Oh, no.
And so your GPS, we've done a lot
Well,
of
I'm glad
events
you
out
brought
here.
that up. We're down with just 45 seconds. Paul, where can they reach you online?
They can reach me at the California Cannabis Ministry.
Thank you. We
Nice.
never got to the spiritual use. You've all got to come back at some point, and we'll devote more time. Thank you, Paul. Thank you,
you,
Jay.
Paul.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, viewers. Here is Scott Sky Johnson with about 25 seconds of music. Help us restore him.
Is there any doubt in your mind? You put yourself where you're at. Hold on to those things that make your life wonderful and put the rest out with your cat. 'Cause you get to choose, yeah, you can call it a win or call it a lose, but don't sit around here singing your blues, 'cause when it all comes down, you know it come right back to you. Because you can have everything easy, let your light shine, yeah, yeah, out to everyone, 'cause separation's only in your mind. See what you are and see it as beautiful. See what you do as the way. Take a look around you, 'cause life is a miracle, and let that fact make your day. 'Cause you get to choose, yeah, you can call it a win or you can call it a lose, but don't sit around here singing your blues, 'cause when it all comes down, you know it come right back to you. There's nothing more that you can do but let your light shine through, because you get to choose.